Hello out there in Radioland. This is Michael. This is the Street Preacher's Corner podcast, the podcast that is fluent in gibberish and stuttering. If you don't believe that's true, you should do what I did and turn on the transcript feature when you're listening to something. Well, as you can see by the title, I have to say something though before we get it. The title does feel a little bit clickbaity kind of thing, and I didn't say I said I wasn't going to do things like that. But this entire discussion is happening because somebody asked me if I believed in lizard people. And you know who you are, and this is all your fault. Now, when I say lizard people, or as Hecklefish Moriarty would say, lizard people, some of you may not know because you're not into everything that I'm into. You don't walk the strange paths that I walk sometimes. You may not know what I'm talking about when I say lizard people. And so let me just bring you up to speed a little bit, just a very, cursory view of things. There is a theory out there, most famously advanced by a guy named David Icke, who I've conversed with, by the way. I've corresponded with David Icke, and it's a few years back, but I talked to the man. Anyway, he's probably the most famous proponent or advocate of this theory, um, that the world either was or is run by a race of intelligent lizards, humanoid reptilian people of some kind. Some people say that they seeded this life and started the life on this planet, and then are watching us from the mothership or some such thing. Some people say that they are in disguise, walking among us, holding key positions of power. And back when YouTube was the fun place instead of a business place, you could find all kind of videos of people looking at the Queen of England or looking at George W. Bush or something like that, and saying, "Look, here's proof that he's a lizard man in a costume." And those were glorious days of the internet. Anyway, so some people say that the lizard people are are the elite. They're at the top of society's, power structure, the top of the pyramid. And some say they're just, they're watching us from the mothership in space. So even within the lizard people community of lizard people believers, there are a wide variety of subcamps. Like every good movement, there's fractions and factions, and you think they're independent Baptists, although they all pretty much get along. Anyway, as I alluded to before, I was asked if I believed in lizard people, and before we can answer that, we have to back up a little bit. And because this is, after all, the Street Preachers Corner podcast, and not mythology or us, we have to establish some things from the Bible. So we're going to start here, and it's going to sound like I'm wandering way off the reservation, but I promise you, I know where I'm going, and I know pretty much how I'm going to get there. And of course, step one actually getting there is actually finding the book of Ezekiel, and there we are. Ezekiel 1, lizard people. I like Hecklefish Moriarty. If you don't know who Hecklefish Moriarty is, look it up and enjoy yourself. This is Ezekiel 1, and we're gonna start at verse 1, and we're gonna read down about for a little bit, and then we'll skip a couple verses. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Shebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's, man, I mangled that one, Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of the Lord was there upon him. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. Verse 10, as for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and they 4 also had the face of an eagle. So there's a lot going on there in those handful of verses. But for now, I just want to kind of zero in on the idea that there are these creatures, whatever they are. We can have that discussion later. These creatures, whatever they are, they have four faces, and the four faces are listed as man, lion, ox, and eagle. Okay? All right. Ezekiel 10. In Ezekiel 10, these critters make another appearance. And in verse 14, and every one had four faces. The first face was the face of a cherub, the second face was the face of a man, the third face the face of a lion, and the fourth face the face of an eagle. So when they're listed again the second time, the list is different, and it's only different one point. It's different in that instead of being man, lion, ox, eagle, it is man, lion, cherub, eagle. So it does not take a Bible scholar to conclude that a cherub has the face of an ox. Now just stick a pin in that for now. We're going to look at Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. We'll do Ezekiel first because it's closer. And as weird a topic as this is, I hope you appreciate, intrepid listener, that I'm doing this podcast in the dark. And I've already had two pretty solid jump scares already this evening. And if you know anything about my front yard, you won't be surprised. Ezekiel 28, verse 13 and 14. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardis, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire and emerald, the carbuncle, and gold, the workmanship of thy tabrets, and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so, thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Now, before I get too far off track, let's jump over to Isaiah 14, and that is the other direction where I was going. Isaiah 14. I'm doing this in the dark, and I'm facing away from the direction in which anyone would be coming if they came out here to see what I was doing. So, fun. Isaiah 14, verse 12 says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will also sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. So we learned a couple of pretty crucial things in these two passages. One of the crucial things we learn is that Satan, both these chapters, both these passages chapters, are attributed to being sort of a biography of Lucifer. Later on, becomes Satan. But we can learn from these passages that Satan has the face of an ox because, after all, he is a cherub, and cherub has the face of an ox. And we can also learn from here that Satan desires worship. Satan is in the worship business. Now, I promise you, folks, we are merely skimming over the top because, as I said, well, it's a lot, and I did mercilessly tease you with lizard people, and so I have to eventually get there. And if I cover everything that's going on with the devil and the gems and the all that stuff, we will never get any place. So Ezekiel 32. Run back over to Ezekiel, so we can start to tie some knots here before we launch off into the deep here. 32. It says, and it came to pass in the 12th year, in the 12th month, in the first day of the month, that the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation to Pharaoh king of Egypt, and say unto him, Thou art like a young lion of the nations, and thou art as a whale in the seas, and thou camest forth thy rivers, and troublest the waters with thy feet, and foulest their waters. And I don't know why I have that verse in here. I am such a professional. I'm sorry, that's Exodus. Exodus. I cannot read my own handwriting. I'm reading through this going, this has nothing to do with anything. So where was I? So the devil has the face of an ox or cow of some kind, some sort of bovine creature, and he desires worship. So in Exodus 32, which is way more accurate than what I had before, starting in verse 1. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mountain, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And they received them at their hand, and fashioned with a graving tool, after that he had made a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So it's interesting, in light of what we know from the other passages that we covered. It is interesting. It's actually a little odd when you think about it, that when Israel, who later on has a very involved history with idolatry, but this is their first go at idolatry. This is their first time out of the house as far as idolatry goes. And when they do their first run at idolatry, the thing that they just decided on their own to worship looks like this malevolent entity that desires worship. I mean, who put the idea in their head of all the things they could have bowed down to, out of all the things that they could have made a statue of? Why'd they make it of a calf or an ox or a cherub? Who put that idea in their head? Stick a pin in that, okay? There's a lot of pins here. We're going to pick up 1 Corinthians 8. 1 Corinthians 8 in one hand, and 1 Corinthians 10. I don't guess you even need a second hand. 1 Corinthians 8, the Bible do say, Now as touching things offered unto idols, we know that all have knowledge. Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. And if any man think he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing, yet as he ought to know. But if any man love God, the same is known of him. And concerning therefore the eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice to idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. Okay? 1 Corinthians 10. Verse 19. What say I then, that the idol is anything, or that which is offered up to sacrifice to idols is anything? But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice unto devils, and not to God, and I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. So apparently there is nothing special about the idol itself. There's nothing, you go out there in the woods, you cut down a tree, you make a little man out of it, you bring it in your house, you bow down in front of it, and God tells you you're an idiot because there's nothing there. There's no power behind that wood in and of itself. I have a friend of mine, and he likes to go to these restaurants, and he'll go to these Chinese restaurants or go to these restaurants that have the Mexican restaurant, and they'll have like a little statue of Buddha in there, or a little statue of Mary in there, or a little bitty, one of those little cats that waves their hand back and forth. And he'll take them, and he'll take those little statues, and he'll set them on their side. And he does it to prove a point, because after all, if you take a statue of Mary and you set it on its side, and Mary is not even powerful enough to make her own statue stand back up, how in the world is she going to help you? And same thing with Buddha and all the other things. So the idol is nothing. There's nothing magical about it. It's just a thing that somebody made, and it's just a thing somebody made. But apparently, according to 1 Corinthians 10, behind that idol, when you get into the realm of worship, there is unseen and sort of behind the scenes devils that desire worship and will accept the worship of those idols as worship of themselves. So on one level, it's just this dumb human activity going on, of vanity. Well, on the other level, there is an active intelligence involved, an active, invisible intelligence involved that drives and influences and encourages false or improper worship. Okay? You are not the only player on the field, as it turns out. You are not the only part of this false worship equation. There is something there that wants to be worshiped, and it will accept. So not only does Israel make a cow for an idol, but when they get to the land of Canaan, there's these people, the Canaanites living there, and the Canaanites have this wide pantheon of deities that the children of Israel have not been around because they've been in Egypt for 400 years or so. But when they get to the idols of Canaan, the vast majority of them are cow idols of some kind. Moloch, Baal, all those guys have a manifestation, a physical representation of them that involves a cow head of some kind. I mean, that's kind of they have these people in the land of Canaan who on their own have come up, with the same sort of idea, deities that look like oxen or cherubim. So, I said guys like Baal or Moloch, they're monstrous, cow-faced devils, okay? But it's not just Israel, and it's not just the Canaanites. In fact, the entire ancient world, including cultures that didn't have any contact with each other, have this alarming trend to have a handful of these same representations show up over and over again. And every single one of these representations that is so prevalent has a negative connotation in the Bible. You're saying, what in the world are you saying? Okay, so if you go around the world, all these ancient cultures, I'm gonna give you some stuff on them. What you will find is that there is a prevalence towards bulls and serpents and dragons in the ancient religion all over the world, even from cultures that were isolated from everybody else. Somehow on their own, bulls come up, dragons come up, and serpents come up. Now, if that was just people just coming up with whatever popped in their head on their own, that'd be a little weird. But once you understand there's something behind all this stuff, then you start to see. So you've got guys like, there's such a propensity towards this in the ancient world, and I really struggle with how much to go into this because a lot of it's worth mentioning, but it's not worth spending a whole lot of time thinking about. It's not worth delving into. But I promise you, you want to read some books, and you know me in real life. Find me, I will loan you the books. Anyway, so it's so weirdly prevalent thing that the people that are big proponents of the lizard people theory, they will say, look, all these cultures have these anthropomorphic lizards, these overgrown snakes, these dragons, and they will point to that as proof of that lizards once ruled the world, or that lizards have been instrumental in guiding humanity, and that the ancient people understood this. I've even heard theories that the early church suppressed their knowledge of the lizard people. Yeah, you want to run down that road, you can, I guess. So as I said, such a prevalent thing that all stuff is cited as proof that maybe way back in the past, the lizard people were more out in the open. So you have guys like Zechariah Sitchin and Graham Hancock and Bruce Rux and even Eric von Daniken, and they have all documented these creation stories all throughout the world that sound like the Genesis account, but in their version, the serpent is the good guy. He's the hero of the story. Now, when I mention guys like Sitchin and Hancock and Rux and Von Daniken, those guys, those guys don't believe the Bible. And a lot of time they find I don't want to say this. Those guys don't believe the Bible. And a lot of times they will find interesting things that they don't know what to do with, but at least they're looking at it. At least they are willing to look at unusual things and come up with some sort of explanation instead of just ignoring it like it didn't happen. But for example, you have in Norse mythology, you have Jormungand. I'm gonna mangle all these names, and I don't care because they are the names of devils. But anyway, For example, you have Yorgleman in the Norse mythology is this giant serpent, a giant serpent that encircles the world. I mean, well, how would you come up with that on your own? I don't even know if they have snakes up in the. It seems like it'd be too cold for them. There's Marduk. He's the ancient Sumerian god whose name means calf of the sun or bull calf of Utu. You got the feathered serpent god in the Mesoamerican religion. I am not even going to try to say his name. It starts with a Q. Now, in that legend, and you'll see this in a lot of these the creation myths from around the world, from the more debased cultures. What you'll see is that God is the bad guy, the God of the Bible, or the God that, for example, just one that I happen to know off the top of my head. In the Sumerian religion, there was a council of gods that created mankind, but they did not want mankind to advance and be as powerful as they are or as wise as they are, and so they withheld knowledge and technology and things like fire and that sort of thing, or a written language from mankind, so that mankind would not advance beyond a certain point. And the serpent comes along and he offers mankind knowledge, like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He offers the mankind information, he offers the mankind technology of a sort, and he's the good guy because he's come to help you out. Yeah. So in some branches of Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism, there is a race of humanoid males or humanoid snakes, I guess, lizard people, that and some of these legends have these lizard people. They are the guardians of they're the bringers of wisdom and of knowledge, and so, for example, you get the snake dances of the Hopi Indians, which promote rain and fertility, which is interesting because Baal was the god of fertility and the god of rain, and so is Ashtaroth. You've got the Egyptian fertility god Hathor, who was or Hathor. She was usually depicted as a cow. You've got Zeus, who mated with human women while disguised as a bull. Over and over again, all over the world, you have snakes and you have bulls and you have dragons, and usually they are the heroes of the story. They're the ones who bring enlightenment to mankind. Now, why would that be? How in the world would all these cultures on their own come up with these ideas that reflect the true story, but it's a twisted version of the true story? And it's all twisted in the same direction. It's all twisted so that the serpent is the good guy. Serpent is the guy who wants to let you have fun and give you access to things that God doesn't want you to have. Yea, hath God said. Seems like I read that somewhere. So like I said, why would that be? Could it be that mankind at one point all had the right story, all had the correct version of creation and the correct story of the flood? And after the Tower of Babel happens and all these people get scattered all over the world, the God of this world had thousands of years to bake his version of the story into the mythos of 1,000 cultures. I think that's what happened. I think what you have is people left the Tower of Babel with one version of the story, and by the time the devil whispers in their ear for several thousand years, they've got all the same elements in the story, but it's switched around. So throughout the history of Israel, from the conquest of Canaan and beyond, into the kingship and also the Israelites had a real struggle with Baal worship and such as all that. And if you go through your Bible, you go through Kings, you go through Chronicles, you will notice that every once in a while they would get a good king on the throne, and this guy would really clean house. He would really try to get the country back where it ought to be. And these guys would come through and they would kill all the Baalite priests, and they'd destroy the temples, they'd cut down the groves, and they'd destroy the written records, they'd burn their pictures. They would stomp it out as best as they could, where there should be no remnant. There's no one left worshiping Baal. There's no one left to teach you how to worship Baal. You don't have any pictures of Baal to go by. We've destroyed all the statues. We have wiped out this religion for good. And then 20 years or so later, it'd be back in full force with all the trappings and all the ceremonies. Now, doesn't that strike you, dear listener, as a little bit unlikely? So let's say you wanted to stomp out a certain hymn. Let's say you really hated the song Rock of Ages. And so what you did is you went through and you gathered up all the hymnals and you burned them all and you smashed all the pianos and you killed all the song leaders and you destroyed all the copies that, digital or audio or whatever. You went to town because you're going to get rid of this song. And then, you think your work's done. And then 40 years later, you find a bunch of people singing Rock of Ages in perfect 4-part harmony somewhere. The question, it's a fair question to ask, would be, who taught you that song? Who taught you how to do that? And so when the Israelites go through and they destroy all this stuff and they wipe it out, they do a much better job of wiping it out than other people have. They put a lot more effort into it than a lot of people had to wipe out other things that were successfully wiped out. But when it comes to things like Baal worship, idolatry, worship of snakes, worship of dragons, worship of bulls, that stuff always comes back and comes back and comes back. And I submit to you that that behind idolatry and behind bad doctrine and behind false gods are these ageless entities, foul spirits, evil spirits, demonic spirits. And they want attention and they want worship. See, the lizard people never went away. And so these entities, they, in times past throughout humanity's history, they have steered the imaginations and the worship of men. They have taken on names and personas. They have taken on identities. And I don't know how keen they are on the idea of letting some of these identities go. In fact, it might be that they pull and tug and steer things to make sure that those names that they held in times past, that those names stick around. In fact, if you look around, their names are everywhere. Everywhere. Today is Thursday, aka Thor's Day. Yesterday was Wednesday, aka Woden's Day. In fact, don't you think that it's odd that every planet in our solar system, except the one you live on, and everything that orbits around those planets is named after some entity or some character in ancient mythology? I mean, modern men of science, you say, well, these were done a long time ago. Well, some of them were, some of them weren't. But modern men of science, men who were men of science back then, they looked up at the sky, and when it came time to name what they found, they didn't name it after themselves. They didn't name it after their wife. They didn't name it after their hometown. They didn't name it after their favorite grandmother. They gave these heavenly bodies the names of devils. And nobody blinked, and nobody thought it was weird. And there are entire religions built around the worship of lights in the sky that are named after devils. And if I stopped right there, actually, we won't stop right there. Tell you what. Somebody doesn't want those names to die out. Now, I'm sure it's just me. I'm sure that this is just one of my kooky theories. By the way, when we sent spacecraft to go look at the stuff that's named after devils, what did we name those spacecraft? The Apollo program, the Mercury program, the Gemini program. We just sent one up. We called it Orion, the Orion program. Yes, somebody doesn't want those names to die out. But it doesn't stop there. It is October, and people feel right now, at this part of the year, it seems like it starts earlier every year. People feel like they have the liberty to indulge in their fascination with darkness and with death and the occult in the name of fun. Think about how weird it is. Things happen and you do things and you don't think about it because you've done them all your life and everybody else is doing them. And it's just a thing everybody does. But you got to sometimes stop and think about what you're doing. And why are we doing this? How did this even become a thing? So think about how weird it is that people will, on purpose, decide to adorn their front yard where the neighbors can see. They will decide, just on a whim, just because it's that time of year, to adorn their front yard with the most realistic depiction of a dead body that the homeowners association will let them get away with. You wouldn't do that in springtime, but for some reason this time of year, and I get it. So the Bible says that light has come into the world and men love darkness rather than light. Men love darkness. Men are fascinated with the occult. Men are fascinated with death sometimes. Men are fascinated with darkness. Men are fascinated with the hidden things, the occult, because occult means hidden. All that stuff is already baked into human nature, into sin nature. But then you have this time of year here that we're in, All Hallows Eve, a holiday that, whether you like it or not, whether you choose to participate or not, it is no matter how much you water it down, it is a celebration of death and a celebration of the morbid and a celebration of the occult. And it's been that way for thousands of years. And that holiday is one of those things that somebody is trying to keep it around. And so you'll say, my goodness, it's starting to cool down a little bit and all this kind of stuff and getting where you can spend more time outside. Hey, let's put a dead body in the front yard. Hey, let's put a representation of an unclean spirit in my front yard. Hey, let's hang a thing on the house that looks like a woman who practices witchcraft, which the Bible says is an abomination to God. Let's do that. It is. You take representations of the undead and blood and gore and devils, and you use them as a lawn decoration. You use them as an adornment for your house. It is the time of year when a man dressed as Dracula will tell his kids who are dressed as witches and ghouls to get away from the street preacher because he's scary. True story. And it is all painted over the idea with fun to make it palatable. I have talked to Wiccans who just get irritated with the fact that, this Christian society that they think they live in, this Christian society took one of their most sacred days and made it into a joke. And that's not a conquest. That's not a repudiation of Wiccanism. That is you messing around with the edges of darkness. It is a celebration of death and a fascination with darkness, and it is one more symptom of rebellion against the one who is light and who is life. So yes, I do believe in lizard people, but not like David Icke does. No, I believe that there is something way more sinister. I believe that the reason that stuff shows up so often is because the world is run by a big, ancient snake in the form of the devil. And he and his allies exert a constant influence on men, saved and lost, to get their way. And that's why you can go out there and you can preach, and people get furious and they don't even know why. They will paint you as their enemy and they don't even know why. They will get so mad at you. And if you could calm them down and say, what are you so mad about? They don't even know why. And the reason why is because the God of this world has at least some portion of their mind and their heart. And they see you as the enemy because he sees you as the enemy. And I think you can do what you want because you're going to anyway. But I think you got to be very, very careful in the trappings of this world and the celebrations of this world and the focuses of this world. Because, like I said, lizard people did not go away. They're running the show. But there's coming a day in which the Lord Jesus Christ himself is going to come down. He's going to set himself up on a throne of righteousness. You know, one of the things I like to do, one of the things I like to think about sometimes, well, actually, it's not fair to say that I like to think about it. I do think about it sometimes. I think about all the things in life that I like. I like lots of things that God can't stand. And this is a little bit off topic, but, here we are. I like lots of things that God cannot stand. I like lots of things that God does not approve of. And I hate to tell you that, but that's the way it is. And so in that coming day in which Jesus Christ rules and reigns from on a throne in Jerusalem, I sometimes look at things that go on in our society and things that are available to me to participate in, and things that constantly pull at my heart to be part of. And I wonder, and it's a fair question to ask, is that thing even going to be around when Jesus is in charge? I mean, are there going to be trick-or-treaters during the Millennium Kingdom? Do you think Jesus Christ is going to let you dress up as a witch or a goblin or a werewolf and run around and threaten people? Say, Mike, you're taking it way too much seriously. And that's because we have taken it so lightly for so long. And it is so much a part of the world we live in. It's like a fish, man, that doesn't even know he's wet because he's been wet all his life. So I don't think there will be Halloween. I think he may rename the days of the week before it's over. He may have whole other names to the planets that we don't know about. And if he does, we will call them by those names. Because one of the things you'll find out about, and you go through the Old Testament and all that stuff in there, when God told them to destroy all that stuff from the land of Canaan and all those Canaanite gods, you weren't even supposed to say their names. God does not want to hear their names. It's quite a thing. Well, there you go. I'm Michael. This has been the Street Corners Preacher's Corner podcast, and I assure you, I am not a lizard person, and I will see you on the other side.